Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Tuesday, March 17th, St. Patty's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. Have to find some Guinness a little bit later. I know there's no real big festivities, of course, for today. No parades or anything like that, but still got to have a Guinness on today. Maybe a couple Guinnesses. I don't know. So where do we where do we finish today? Every day it seems like I'm kind of changing this headline to we resume down or we bounce. It's really hard to find a trend for more than just one day. I've talked about that before, that we're kind of trendless right now, or if anything, we are downtrending, right? We are now officially in a bear market. So I look for evidence every day, confirmation every day to say that something is changing. So nice to see, equities bounce today. There were some things that on the bright side that were a little bit different today. I'll discuss those, but let's just go over the performance really quick. The S&P was up close to 6% for the day. The Qs again outperformed. They continue to show a little bit more strength than S&P, and definitely small caps. Small caps were up 5% for the day, but still trailing, still trailing again, which has kind of been just the usual thing. One of the standouts today was bonds. Look at what happened to bonds today, down 6.6%. I looked at these a couple of times because it's been one of those things where bonds have been uptrending, but they're doing quite a bit of consolidation here, and they have now tried to rally a couple days, and we don't see them closing strong. Even yesterday, it wasn't a convincing closing day for bonds. So they are probably due for some digestion. They're back to basically in here, which is where the uptrend was. So I mean, this is from 179. What a nice short in hindsight from the highs this thing hit all the way back down to 152. But there's, of course, ginormous moves all over the place. The VIX also came in today. I was on Bloomberg TV. I called in very quickly for that. Just a couple minute segment on Bloomberg TV that I was on around 3:20 today, talking about the VIX. So nice to see the VIX come in today, but still, close at 75. So that's not something that I could say, oh, geez, I saw some big divergence or something like that today. That's still holding the short-term moving averages, right? I mean, I've talked about this before, the 5-period moving average. We've been holding that all along the way. So that needs to change. I'm not seeing a breakdown in the VIX, even though it was down today. So we just kind of have to wait and see for that, right? And that'll be some nice confirmation once that happens. But once again, patience is the key here until we see some type of evidence that's that we're getting some confirmation that this market is changing a bit, right? It's been very noisy to trade on a day-to-day basis. There's so many headlines every day. There's also these press conferences that have either been going on at 3:30 or today was 11:30 and went on for like an hour today, or I think even more than an hour today. And you just don't know what they're going to say in these things, right? What do we got right now? Italy's market watchdog bans short selling for 90 days. So that just came out on Bloomberg. Interesting. That just hit the tape. So that's, remember, Spain did that, I think, this weekend. Italy did that. I talked about that in the weekend video, I think, or I talked about that on Twitter back in 2008. The SEC banned short selling in the financials in a bunch of institutions, and it really didn't help at all. Other than gave a 2-day rally, that's kind of what we're seeing as well when they announce all this stimulus. It brings the market up for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then it goes right back to what it was doing before. We've seen that now like about 4 times, I would say four or 5 times. We saw that Sunday night, and when the Fed lowered interest rates down to zero, futures, basically rallied for all about 5 minutes and then went limit down. So I don't know if these things are really having the effect that they're looking for. Maybe it takes a little bit more time. I also think that they're just not getting to the root cause of the situation, right? So, that's for another time to kind of debate that. But more price action just to go over. The bright side that I was going to mention for today, even though I can't really chalk today up to more than just a bounce, an oversold bounce, but there were some things that made a little bit more sense today, right? The utilities, which, again, we've seen this on the big rally days, that the utilities rally. But, some of the other things that kind of make sense, right? I don't like when every single stock just behaves the same way, right? That does happen when correlations increase. You tend to see all stocks, almost all the stocks are kind of moving the same way, unless it's something like Zoom Video, which is not in any of the major indices, right? You got to remember that these indices are just pulling the indices and the ETFs. Are what's going on in there, and the heavy volume is just pushing all these stocks around together. Well, today was a little bit different. Like finally, something like Clorox, which I've talked about for a while, was in the weekend watch list. I don't own any Clorox right now. I just got impatient with it. It just wasn't doing what I wanted to do, and I find that a lot with this market right now. It's very difficult to hold positions because of the volatility. But God, oh, sorry, I was going to say something bad, but it did finally work. So at least peace of mind for me. This thing was up 13% today, up $23. That was what I was looking for, was for this thing to go nuts. Other stocks that I think should be doing well, like Procter and Gamble, right, who makes a lot of these products that people are, hoarding basically, or running out to get. Procter and Gamble is one of those names. What's the other one? Campbell's Soup. I don't own any. I'll be honest. I don't own any of this stuff. But Campbell's Soup had a nice day too. It also took out a bunch of these Virgin point of controls to the upside. So again, like even though it's kind of weird, right, to see Campbell's Soup go up, 9-10%. Still, it's these are the companies that should be doing well, so at least that makes sense, right? Like intuitive sense or logical, and that's kind of what I'm waiting for too, is for this market to have a little bit more logic to it, right? And not like Clorox was going down for a while. It's like, really, everybody's using that to disinfect things. So again, I'm looking. That's another thing that I'm looking for, is for these things to make more sense. A couple bright spots today, just away from like the really defensive type things. Coupa Software was up 25% today. A couple more days of up 25%. This thing can get back to 52-week highs. Sorry, you got to have a little bit of joke in here. But to be serious for a minute, this was nice to see a company have good earnings. So again, something that like finally made a little bit of sense. Coupa Software having great results, and the stock closed right on the highs of the day. So pretty good stuff. At least something to kind of to maybe build from, even though I still want to see more evidence that we're going to have more than just a one-day bounce. Also, I talked about that 5-day moving average and the VIX. If we look at the indices as well, we're not seeing that. We're not seeing the confirmation too that this is out of the downtrend, right? It does look like we have the 4th day down here, so maybe we are trying to carve out a little bit of a bottom in here, where we could do more than just bounce slightly for the day. It's crazy because this market was up decently for the day, but you kind of have to just pair this together with the recent volatility and realize that it's not that great. And the Nasdaq, the same thing. The Nasdaq is not getting back above any of the short-term moving averages, so the trend remains down for now. So we'll wait for a little bit more evidence. I always like to give you my trades and tell you what I'm kind of thinking. I continue to day trade, some of which I'm having some really good success with, and then a couple trades not so. I missed my stop in one trade today. Kind of gave me a little bit of a bruise. That was in Team. Where did this team end up? I keep trying to go back to names that had very good earnings quarters. Not much to really jump up and down again. Again, this thing isn't taking back any of the short-term moving averages either. But I'll continue to watch. A name like MDB reported after the close today. What's this thing doing? I don't think that much. FedEx reported, I believe they were up initially. Yeah, they're up a little bit. But again, most of these companies, like FedEx, are not going to provide guidance. All right, and yeah. So what else did I? Again, I always dwell on the negative. I had a number of really good trades. Spy worked, CVS worked. I added to. I think this is like basically my only option position that I've got on right now. May 6th. Sorry, scratch that. I actually started a position in Microsoft today too. Microsoft is one of those names that I've been watching for a while. I think it makes sense in this environment. A lot of companies are using Teams. Also, Slack was another name that, again, you would think would do very well right now. Ticker symbol work. I think this looks good. Sorry, as I jump around here. The level that I wanted to see this thing overtake, if you go to the 1 hour chart, was basically 19. So this would make sense for this to kind of come back a bit. So I would continue to watch this one, even though the chart looks messy as hell. Of course, Zoom is doing okay, but Zoom I think has to get back above 112 on that daily. A lot of consolidation back and forth, which is fine. You know, a pullback into support and digestion, fine. You just have to wait for a signal in that one. And then finally, yeah, I traded a little bit of Wendy's. ITB, I very rarely take shots on things that are just look horrendous in terms of a chart, but this thing is so oversold. TMO worked very well. Also traded a little bit of Salesforce just through the value area for the day. Again, everything like this TMO that I did today, good example of basically this was the first trade that I did. And again, every trade that I'm doing for day trading or anything else, I pre-plan exactly what I'm looking for. And the value areas and the VPOCs, I had my target out at right around 313, and that's exactly where this thing got to, and then it faded. So that's how this market has been going. It's just very tricky. You think you start to that a name might start trending, and then it can just reverse, and just very very quickly. All right, guys, so that's it. This is a couple examples of what I traded. Here was the trade that I saw. I have to check open interest in this. It didn't have a big jump in implied volatility, but there was a lot of Microsoft stuff going on. There was a big block of Microsoft that went up on the close as well. But this is kind of something that I'm looking for. So the open interest is 16,000 of these, but these were the Jan 165 calls. And again, the implied volatility did not jump, so they may also be substituting stock. But it makes sense to me. Like that's the kind of trade that I'm looking for right now. Something out in January where I have some flexibility to it. Take a look at Microsoft on the 1 hour. It's almost inside value. So again, no confirmation yet. It did not. We got one bar that closed inside value. Also on the daily chart, it's almost at the 200-day moving average. So, and that's why basically I just started a position. And I'm not going into anything with 2 feet. Just kind of treading water a little bit and trying to look for some good opportunities, even though I'm waiting for more evidence and confirmation that we've got something else than just a 1 day bounce. All right, guys, that's enough for today. Enjoy your St. Patrick's Day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.